So, like I said, the ceramic art doesn't necessarily get shown as the main stuff in your art history class, but I want to make sure we spend some time with it. So let's start with pop, funk, and minimalism, and let's start with Clayton Bailey, a funk artist. So, funk meaning kind of creepy, kind of funny, kind of gross, definitely designed to kind of make you laugh. And so here, Clayton Bailey, who, by the way, best clay name, right? Clayton Bailey, and then Bailey is the name of a type of kiln. So just perfect clay name. Anyway, Clayton Bailey had these kind of pieces. I think they were actually designed to blow up, and so they weren't just crafted to look like they blew up, but they actually blew up. Also, a lot of kind of toilet humor here, the toilet teapot. I said before that you wouldn't see ceramics in your just general art museum. I lied, or I misspoke. So the piece up here in the corner, sneak it up there, is famous Marcel Duchamp's fountain. So this would have been a Dada art, and so the history of using toilets in your art comes along quite well. We also earlier in this class may have talked about or seen the Kohler factory. And Kohler has I talked about them when we're talking about how ceramics is used for toilets and sinks and tubs and stuff like that, because they make toilets and sinks and tubs and stuff like that out of slip casting. But they also have an artist in residence program where folks work with toilets and tubs and sinks. So kind of keeping with the historical uses of clay for these functional kind of purposes, especially teapots. And you'll see tons of ceramic artists referencing teapots, generally not toilets, but sometimes maybe. Robert Arneson, now he actually does show up in kind of the general art history that's not specifically clay focused, and as a kind of pop funk guy, he crosses over, and so a lot of his stuff was had some political kind of leadings. He's got a lot of these self-portraits of himself, made of clay, obviously. Here we have the Arneson brick hitting the Arneson head. So we get the references, and then references to political figures over here, and of course George Washington on the money, and the Mona Lisa referenced over here. So really kind of playful stuff, but often with a political or social message snuck in there as well. David Gilhooly, another one of these kind of pop and funk guys, and he tended to have a lot of frogs as well as food in his work. So again, kind of referencing some of the functional elements of ceramic. You can see the thrown parts of these pieces, but also really sculptural. And one of the things that ceramics does well, which is trick you into thinking it's something else. So the ice cream kind of looks like ice cream. The donut kind of looks like a donut. Ken Price, who's a living and currently I think he's living now, living at least until recently, artist who works with these kind of entirely abstract forms. So a little bit more like the minimalists, although not fully minimalist, but working with fully abstract kind of forms. But one of the things that's really interesting with ceramic artists is there's this attachment to the history of the functional form. And so even artists like Ken Price, whose most of his work is purely abstract and purely sculptural, he's got, cup forms that sneak in there as well. Viola Fry, and I've got a picture of her with the work just to give you a sense of scale. I mean, these things are really massive. One of the things that's kind of fun for somebody in a class where we're making stuff is to see how it's put together. So these would be made in segments, so that they can be then kind of stacked and put together. And of course, that's kind of required when you're working at this huge scale. So these large-scale ceramic portraits and figurative sculptures are a familiar work for her. You can see the textured surface of her glazes or her surface application. Another artist working at a very large scale, Jun Kaneko, and these, I don't have a person standing there, but these pieces at the bottom are taller than me. I actually got to handle some of the faces when I worked an internship in a museum in Cedar Rapids, and I mean, the crates, I could easily go inside the crates that held, you know, very, very, very large scale works. And a lot of his forms are fairly simple forms, but lots of play with glazing and kind of the mark making on the surface, and as it swells around these rounded forms. Now, Jun Kaneko, really large scale. I'm going to switch to Eva Kwong, who is working at a much smaller scale. These are tabletop kind of sized forms, but there's some interesting overlap, right, with the surface textures. For you all working in a, in a ceramics class, one of the things that's kind of fun to see is her dotting of glazes on these pieces, and you see even a contrast of textures. So this glossy glaze, and then the glaze or underglaze or slip underneath, which isn't quite as shiny. Now, Eva Kwong, unable to or unwilling to separate herself entirely from the history of the vessel. And so we see this flower because this is a vase. It's just such an interesting thing when we look at ceramic art, how many artists are tied to the vessel form, even when they're making really sculptural work. Ruth Duckworth, sculptural forms as well as these wall forms that are sort of halfway between sculpture. They're relief sculpture essentially, but wall mounted, a little bit like a painting, kind of painting with shadow, thinking a lot about the shadows and the overlaps. These forms often, Ruth's forms often sort of suggest a person, like a figurative kind of reference, although it's not always totally clear. Lucy Rea and Hans Koper, two British artists whose work is often seen together, and these forms are really based on historical kind of forms, the play with proportions and stuff like that. They are functional-ish, right? They are vases oftentimes, but really draw right on the edge between, like, these aren't, their primary purpose is not a flower vase, right? Their primary purpose is sculptural, even though they technically could be containers and stuff like that. So kind of an interesting balance between the two. So I've collected all the stuff that is really sculptural primarily, and I want to come back to the vessel because, like I said, the vessel, the container, the history of ceramic objects as pitchers and vases and teapots is really really shows up in a lot of contemporary ceramics, stuff that's shown in museums that no one would ever dream of eating out of, maybe. So here we have, this pillow pitcher, and then down on the bottom, these sculptural forms where you see there's kind of, again, a balance between, yes, they are vessels, they have a container, they're referencing teapot forms, but they're also sort of flattened out in ways that really remind us of a painted mural or something like that. And so as we look at this one longer, we spend time looking at the blue and seeing the vase with the flowers or plants or whatever, and then looking at the form as well and trying to kind of balance which part is doing more of the work here in an interesting way, I think. Rudy Audio here, with, again, vessels. Definitely these are vessels, but the vessel form has changed a lot, and it is sort of bent and twisted to fit these figures. Actually, Kevin Snipes is a contemporary artist who I should have included. I just thought of it now, but his work is actually really similar in some ways, where he has these stories kind of around the outside, and he's quite a bit younger than some of the generation I'm showing you here. Akio Takamori, again, here we have vessel references, but flattened almost like they're paintings, but we see teapots, we see cups, right? We see containers. We also see figures. And so we're kind of playing with the distinction between vessel or figurative, vessel or painting. Patty Warashina, this is, so it takes a moment to figure out how this is vessels, but this is a tea or sake set. And so here we go. These cups of coins, stacks of coins, if you flip them upside down, they're actually cups. This figure here, the head is the vessel, the arm is the spout, the hands are the handle, and one of these things on the head comes off to fill. Now, would you ever use this thing? No way, right? It would be difficult to clean, but you also paid as much money as you did to get a Patty Warashina. You wouldn't be wanting to risk it. It's an interesting discussion or conversation about how these are teapots, but they're really very sculptural. Richard Notkin is another one here, and again, I think you can see the handle, vessel, lid, spout here, but we also have, this is also a teapot. The mushroom cloud comes off. This is, I think the spout kind of comes through here. The ear's a handle. These flip over or maybe open from the top. They're technically teapot, tea set things, but really about sculptural. And Richard Notkin's work, kind of like Patty Warashina's, often has political commentary in it as well. Michelle Erickson is an interesting one in that she's really directly referencing the history of the kinds of functional work that we've seen throughout history, particularly in European ceramics. These are puzzle jugs or puzzle pitchers, a bit like what we saw with George Orr. And this says made in China, and it's referencing the kind of import of Chinese pottery that was really, really important in Europe in particular in the 17th, 18th centuries. Andrea Gill, some of the things we've talked about previously, right? We see the vessel, we see the painting, we see the surfaces. Martha Grover's one you'll find on Instagram. If you go looking for her, you can see her process. Functional works, but really sculptural, referencing floral. Jennifer McCurdy, you can also find her on Instagram, pushing the boundaries of what will stand up in a functional form. Adam Field, you can find on Instagram, carving away at his stuff. Krista Assad, again, iron that is a teapot, vessels, and I think, I can't remember if these are entirely sculptural. I think these might be entirely sculptural forms, but kind of a mix of things. One of the things ceramics does really well, it allows you to do trompe-l'oeil or make the stuff be really, really realistic. These works by Marilyn Levine are all ceramics except for the buttons or the snaps and the laces. But the rest, this is ceramics. It's ceramics made to look like leather. Richard Shaw, you can slow any of these down if you need to. Richard Shaw, all of his work is made out of ceramic, but made to look like books and bottles and balls and pastels. Sylvia Hyman, similarly, real similar to Richard Shaw's work, made to look like paper, made to look like wood, made to look like other materials. Tip Toland, very realistic, hyper-realistic depictions of people. Find her on Instagram. She's also based in the Seattle area. And then I've got a few more here that just talk about artists working with the history of politics, sex, history, emotion, society, these kinds of things together. So this is Judy Chicago, who you will find in most art history books. Her work is this set, the dinner table, and it had place settings on all three sides, meant to reference the Last Supper, but place settings for famous women through history. And then there's famous women depicted here. Ceramic dishes, embroidered other tableware, tablecloths and stuff like that. Richard Notkin again, just because I like Richard Notkin, I guess. Again, politics, tile work here. Arthur Gonzalez, Crystal Bolger, Chrysanthemum, referencing the kind of China sculpture that we might see slip cast or from the previous couple of centuries. Jason Briggs, find him on Instagram as well. Porcelain and Hair. Beth Kavanagh. These animal figures, often very kind of emotional references and stuff. Also, should have warned you about keeping the kids out if you've got kids around right now. Reference the kind of form of the snake references this Greek Laocoon figure. And then finally, Andrew Potter, who at least until recently was in the Seattle area. These kind of grotesque children and this